morning. The news from TVAM on Saturday the 29th of December. The government is to issue gas masks to 21,000 British civilians living in the Gulf. It follows complaints by Britons in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain and Qatar that the Foreign Office isn't doing enough to protect them from a possible Iraqi chemical attack. Some other European countries have already issued their civilians with protective equipment. Meanwhile, frontline British troops are preparing to be inoculated against biological weapons, including the lethal anthrax bacteria. From Saudi Arabia, Barbara McCann reports.
British military personnel in the Gulf have already been issued with protective clothing and respirators. The added precaution to immunise them, and in particular the frontline soldiers, follows intelligence reports indicating the seriousness of the threat from germ warfare. America is also taking steps to vaccinate its troops. It fears Saddam Hussein may have developed a powerful strain of the anthrax bacteria and other biological agents, which could be delivered in small bombs or artillery fire and inhaled by victims in the form of mist droplets. Confirmation of the inoculation plans came as the British government announced that it is to issue gas masks to Britons living in the Gulf region. Earlier, residents had complained that appeals for protection against chemical attacks were being ignored. Barbara McCann, TVAM News, Saudi Arabia.
Nearly 400 people will receive call-up papers in the post this morning, ordering them to report for duty in the Gulf. Yesterday, Defence Secretary Tom King announced that 390 reservists had been chosen for their medical skills. The compulsory call-up follows the shortfall of volunteers on Thursday, when 700 Territorial Army soldiers and reservists came forward. It's already clear that some of those receiving their Gulf marching orders today won't want to go. Kay Oliver reports.
Military reservists who have an objection to being called up for service in the Gulf will have their cases assessed by the Soldiers, Sailors and Airmen's Families Association. The organisation has been called in by the Ministry of Defence to investigate the circumstances of people who do not want to go. They aim to reach everyone who has a problem or worry.
We are on standby to deal with whatever the situation is that crops up. I would guess that there will be quite a few people who simply don't want to go.
The decision to call up more Army reservists, along with 140 personnel from the Royal Auxiliary Air Force, comes after hundreds of volunteers reported to centres in Aldershot and Glasgow. The last major call-up after the Second World War was over Suez in 1956, when national service was still in operation.
People in the TA and people who are reservists know what their commitment is, and they know that they could be called up at any time to defend the interests of the United Kingdom or the defence of the realm.
Under the terms of the 1980 Reserve Forces Act, there are no fixed penalties for people objecting to call-up. However, the matter will be referred to a magistrate for a final decision. Kay Oliver, TVAM News at the Ministry of Defence in central London.
A ferry passenger is feared drowned in the Irish Sea after falling overboard early this morning. It's the second time in 24 hours that a person has been lost from the ferry Galloway Princess on its run between Stranraer and Larne. An MP is calling for tighter safety measures on waterways after 2 children and a baby drowned in a Berkshire canal. Tony Durrant, MP for Reading West, is demanding that emergency equipment and lifebelts are installed by the British Waterways Board. An inquest into the deaths at the Burfield Mill Lock on the Kennerton-Avon Canal will open on Monday. Mark Longhurst reports.
The children's mother, Suzanne Vasquez, and her husband Carlos were still being comforted by relatives at Tilehurst in Reading last night. A post-mortem revealed that 6-year-old Claire Vasquez, her 8-year-old sister Carla and 7-month-old baby Craig died by drowning. Police who made another search of Burfield Mill Lock are appealing for more witnesses who may have seen the mother and children by the canal on Thursday.
Obviously, we'd be extremely grateful if these 2 men would come forward so that we could speak to them. The 2 men would have walked past the lock whilst the family were there and the children were playing.
There are now calls for safety equipment to be urgently fitted to the canal. Any police findings on safety will be passed to the Newbury coroner, Charles Hoyt. An inquest into the 3 deaths will be opened at Newbury Magistrates Court on Monday morning. It's expected to be adjourned with a date set for a full hearing. Detectives, meanwhile, say their investigations will continue in what's been termed a full inquiry until all details are established. Mark Longhurst, TVAM News, Reading, Berkshire.
The surgeon who performed the unsuccessful heart transplant on baby Christy Strachan has said similar operations must continue if lives are to be saved in the future. Baby Christy died yesterday after his new heart failed. Susie Grant has this report.
11-day-old Christy Strachan died after a 12-hour battle by surgeons to save his life. The donor heart came from a 4-week-old baby girl and was rushed to Ormond Street Hospital from Liverpool after an international appeal. A medical team of 9 worked through the night to carry out the transplant, which appeared at first to be successful. But after just a few hours, the surgeon who led the team had to break the news that the new organ had broken down.
This unfortunate patient has been a failure because of acute deterioration of a transplanted organ, which is one of the causes of failure in transplantation.
If little Christy had lived, he would have been the youngest patient ever to receive a heart transplant at Great Ormond Street. Although this heart transplant has proved unsuccessful, the surgeons here are saying that they hope they've learnt from this operation and will be able to carry out more successful transplants in the future. Susie Grant, TVAM News at Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital in central London.
In the Melbourne Test, England's batsmen have had a humiliating day at the hands of the Australian bowlers, with the entire team bowled out for 150 runs. After a promising opening to the second innings, with captain Graham Gooch scoring 58, the England middle order collapsed. David Gower, Philip de Freitas and Angus Fraser were all out for ducks. Australia need just 197 runs to win. And the weather. Overnight there have been heavy snowfalls in Northern Ireland, blocking some major roads. Snow is forecast on high ground in northern England, Scotland and Wales. There'll be strong winds and rain across most of the country. But in the south it may brighten up later. And that's the news at 7 minutes past 6. The next bulletin is at 7 o'clock.